are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Welcome, all you Kabbalists, practitioners of tarot, and everyone who thought that Immortal Hulk was just a little too straightforward. It is time for episode number 83, legacy number 83, of the Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your decidedly non-mystical host, Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn Studio, high atop stately Weird Science Tower. And joining me today from the well beyond the worlds is my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you today?
Hey, good. I feel like this whole episode is going to be a setup for me, but let's do it.
Well, it's a big day for you because we talk about two books today. X-Force number 47, which is a cool story, but very, very straightforward. Very Ben Percy, here's the story, in and out, we're done. And then Resurrection of Magneto number 1, which is the exact opposite of that. So you are the Al Ewing expert on this podcast. So a number of times I'll be saying, okay, and now Ruben will explain to us what the hell that means.
Yeah, this is the setup stuff. I think I enjoy Al Ewing about as much as you, and maybe I've read two more series more than you, but I'll go with it. I'm the expert.
Yes, you are. That's what I'm sticking to. We do have two quick news items today before we get into the books. Number one, Marvel released its X-related solicits for April. And, I usually avoid the solicits. You a big solicit reader, Ruben?
I never read them at all. I don't even listen to the solicit podcast that Jim does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to be surprised. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm only going to talk about what books were and were not solicited. That's all I'm going to say.
I do like vague rumors, by the way. I just always feel like the solicits are a little too on the nose, right? Like, I'm happy with getting a no context picture of the future and then trying to speculate what the hell's going on, but I don't like reading the
page number 1 of something with no word balloons in you. You go, oh, what's going on there? That could be fun.
Yeah.
But a couple things I noticed. There are 2 issues of Jed MacKay's Avengers title included with the X books for April. That's issues 12 and 13, which will be crossing over with the Fall of the House of X kind of storyline. Even has that Fall of House of X trade dress on the covers. So I'm guessing, Ruben, that's 2 more books for you and me to cover. Unless Jim wants to fight us for them, but I don't think he's going to fight very hard. He hasn't been a big fan of X stuff or of that particular run of Avengers.
Yeah, I actually, I'm just going to be like the guy with all the wrong opinions on this cast. I know in Slack, everything I say is going to be challenged, but I don't mind the Avengers run that's going on right now. But I do like time travel nonsense, and
I'm writing you down right now as the Avengers expert as well. So fantastic. There's one notable absence from the list for April. No issue of X-Force being solicited. March's X-Force number 50 might be the series finale. I mean, Marvel does like its round numbers, right? Maybe we're going to wrap things up and let Ben Percy devote all his time and efforts to that Sabretooth war that's double shipping. What do you think?
I think that makes sense. I'm also perfectly okay with Wolverine and X-Force books kind of wrapping up. I'm a little bit done with the Ben Percy stuff.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to not get into it too much this podcast. I've complained about the last 2, the whole back and forth in the timeline, revisiting parts of the timeline that we already kind of know what happens afterwards. So it's time to kind of wrap that up, and I'm fine with it. And the second thing I want to note is, once again this week, there are no data pages. At this point, it's going to be a surprise if and when we ever see another one. I do expect we'll probably still get them in Rise of the Powers of X, just to keep those timelines straight. But probably nowhere else is what I'm guessing. Just curious. It's been such a big part of the identity of these books that you'd think there'd be an announcement of something big happens to kind of say, hey, we're not doing that anymore. But it's just faded away, which is curious. All right, now it is time to get into the books themselves. And I'm supposed to hit this ding sound right. There we go. This is X-Force number 47, possibly the anti-penultimate issue of this volume of X-Force. It's called Game Recognizes Game. It's written by Ben Percy, art by Robert Gill, colors by Guru Effects, letters by Joe Caramagna, design by Tom Muller, and Jay Bowen. It's kind of hard to believe that we're in the year 2024. The X office is still trying to figure out what to do with Beast. Way back at the beginning of this podcast, the very first episodes, even before this podcast existed, when I would just listen to our old buddy Chris over on his X-Men podcast, he'd talk about the character of Beast seems broken. And it's hard to take a character that's broken as badly as Beast has been and try to make him usable again. And they've been kind of struggling with that for a while. And I'm sure they'd like to get this wrapped up before handing the keys over to Tom Brevoort and company. And if the series is really ending at issue 50, there's only 3 issues left to do this. So I'm very curious to see exactly what happens. And they may have come up with a pretty interesting idea here. Ruben, are you still around?
I am, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I actually thought they came up with a potentially clever way to give us a Beast that is a hero again.
Yeah, so this issue is very straightforward, like I said. Quick read. It's really just in 2 parts. In part 1, Beast does a thing, and then in part 2, X-Force responds to that thing. And that's really where the interesting plot points come forward. So, part 1, the issue opens with a nearly wordless action scene. I enjoy those. As you'll all recall, last issue's cliffhanger was the revelation that the greenhouse, a.k.a. Krakoa further north, was being watched through the scope of a scary-looking rifle by none other than everyone's favorite furry blue original X-Man himself, Beast. Now, Ruben, you and I had speculated that maybe Beast wasn't there to shoot anybody. Maybe he was just kind of watching over them, still trying to help in his own creepy, twisted way. Is that what happened?
I mean, he shoots Omega Red, but then Omega Red is okay later. And so it seems like he was just trying to basically break in. I'm still going to hold that he wasn't trying to kill anyone. And
that's true.
When he runs off, I think he says something about, good luck surviving.
Which can be read in a couple different ways. He's not there to kill them, but he's also not there to protect them. He's there to steal from them. He does shoot Omega Red right in the chest with some creepy biological, Beast Krakoa thing to it. On first reading, I thought Omega Red was dead.
I did too. I was like, that's a very quick way to deal with that character. But
I mean, later on, he just kind of pops up in the back. He has no lines in this issue aside from what does he say? He gets shot and he says, "Earn." And that is his complete dialogue here.
But he has a healing factor, so maybe just give him something to slow him down a bit so you can break in.
Once again, I have to note just how little Ben Percy seems to care about Omega Red. We've been laughing about this for months and months. Omega Red hasn't had a meaningful or important character moment since that little arc when he was hanging around with alcoholic Sage and they were kind of bonding over their mutual addictions. Like he was addicted to killing people and she was addicted to scotch or whatever. But he's the first X-Force member to be taken down by Beast, so that gives him something. Beast then sneaks into the greenhouse, creeps past Aurora and Northstar, who turned up last issue, some continuity there. He accesses a few Krakoan computer panels, and that's when, finally, he's noticed. Sage is alerted to Beast's presence by some very concerning computerized pings, and when she and the rest of X-Force arrive at the central control room, Beast is there waiting for them, wearing a version of Krakoan battle armor that I don't remember I've seen that exactly before. Have we seen this thing, or is it just kind of generic Krakoan stuff?
It seemed very generic. I didn't recognize it as a well-known suit.
Okay. He looks very calm. I like to think that Beast could have been up and gone several minutes earlier, but he kind of just stuck around so that he could have a more dramatic exit. I think that's a Beast thing to do. He does exit, zooming off like a biotech Iron Man and knocking his erstwhile teammates ass over tea kettle. Look at Black Tom there. He's going to be sore in the morning. They're all just going flying from the rocket exhaust. Very silly. So, part 2 is, how will the team respond? Beast is still out there somewhere. Now he's got a bit of Krakoan tech that Wolverine thinks he's going to use to grow another mobile base to replace that kaiju that got destroyed a couple arcs back. Sage has an idea and a secret to share. She's been hanging on to one last unactivated Beast clone, keeping it alive via Krakoan Bacta tank. The clone is buck naked, and I do like how artist Robert Gill is really careful to always draw it with bubbles covering up strategic locations. Very funny. Unlike the latest Wolverine, no parental warning on this cover, so you gotta keep it PG. Sage calls a full X-Force meeting. Here's where we see that Omega Red survived. Not that he does anything, but he's there. Sage lays out all the bad things that Beast has done, not just in the Krakoan era, but well before. Everything from some connection to mutant growth hormone, the legacy virus, to the Illuminati, to more recently the whole genocide in Terra Verde, those human biological experiments in his space prison, all that stuff. And even after he went fully rogue, that's lowercase r rogue, not Mrs. Gambit, even after that, X-Force has not been able to really bring him in. So Sage's idea is, quote, the best way to stop Beast is Beast. Questionable. It's the little old lady who swallowed the fly. Like, let's swallow another fly and let them fight each other. Maybe not the best logic, but okay. She did find one solitary cerebral backup of Beast's mind that had not been destroyed. This is an old one from right after Beast's time on the New Defenders. There's a footnote saying that this would have been circa New Defenders number 142. Now, Ruben, do you have any idea when that would have been in, like, real-world time?
Yeah, it's really hard to say because that with the time travel stuff, I have no idea I shouldn't say time travel, but with like the continuity resets, I kind of have no idea.
Sure, but I'm just talking about like our, like, you and me time.
Yeah, it was the 80s, right? Sometime
January
around
1985. That is literally still in the Bronze Age. This would be rolling back like 40 years almost of Beast continuity. That's a lot. 40 years.
Yes, that is quite a lot.
So the team's reaction to this idea is mixed. Domino and Kid Omega both call it sketchy. Colossus seems open to it. He remembers how Beast was back then, said, he seemed happy back then. Wolverine, dead set against it, thinks having two Beasts would just be doubling their problems. He gets outvoted. Now we cut to this new old Beast being brought online. They don't need the 5 for this. This is Beast's resurrection system operating independently. We don't know the details. It does make you wonder, could they retrofit this to, have mutant resurrection going for anybody, or is this Beast specific? Hard to say.
I'd say it'd be kind of funny about all this. So what if the whole play is going to be this clone comes back and we're like, they think that, it's this version of Beast that they've got, and then there's like a body swap and the current evil Beast is the one that survives, but because they think they have a heroic version of him, he can now just kind of hang out with the team.
Kind of like a second Dark Beast, but this one undercover? Yes. I mean, it could be. Lots of possibilities here. So as this new old Beast wakes up, the rest of X-Force takes up a defensive posture that, I'm pretty old here, but it looks almost exactly like the old Charlie's Angels logo. I might be the only one who thought that, but it made me laugh, and I posted the picture on the Slack. It's Sage's pose. Sage just sideways with the gun pointed up. That's Charlie's Angels to me.
It probably is, but I didn't think it when I saw it. I think it is.
You're not as old as me. That's okay. So the whole team is here now, including heavy hitters like both Wolverines, Black Tom, who controls all the Krakoan flora, Kid Omega, who is Kid Omega, and yet this dazed newborn Beast in a body he's not really familiar with kind of kicks all their asses for a little while, which seems unlikely to me, but it does look cool, so I guess it's okay. Eventually, Sage kind of goes all Fey Ray and calms down the disoriented Beast. Was Sage wasn't around in 1985, was she?
No,
so
definitely not.
He has no idea who the hell this lady is, but somehow she says, I'm a friend, and that kind of chills him out a little bit. What the first thing that this Hank McCoy actually says is, oh my stars and garters, which as a catchphrase isn't really up there with classics like It's Clobberin' Time, but it does really capture the innocence of the 1980s Beast.
Yeah, and he did say that a lot, so it sort of, I guess, brings you back to that Beast. I always thought it was like a really stupid catchphrase, but he did say it a lot, so yeah, this is a older version of Beast.
Yeah, the art also makes him look like more wide-eyed and childlike, even though he's in the same kind of body as the current Beast, because that's what the clone bodies are. He's still naked, but all the naughty bits hidden in shadows. We jump ahead to, quote, hours later. Beast is behind bars made of Krakoan flora. I wonder what the negotiation was, saying, hi, you're brand new, you think it's still 1985, we're putting you in prison now. I'm curious what that scene would look like, but we skip that. He is wearing pants, very nice, and a nice continuity touch, also glasses. Because while the current Beast had his nearsightedness fixed when he was resurrected, he made sure all the subordinate Beasts would still need those glasses. We now jump ahead to, quote, hours later, where Beast is behind bars made of Krakoan flora. I would be curious to see that scene that gets skipped where they say, hey, Beast, we know you're brand new, you think it's still 1985, you've got no pants on, but we're going to put you in jail for a little minute. I wonder how that conversation. He's also wearing, he does have pants now, very nice, nice continuity touch. He also has glasses on. I guess Beast has like extra glasses stored around places like I do. And this has to be there because we know that the current Beast had his nearsightedness fixed genetically when he got resurrected, but he made sure all his subordinate Beasts would still have to wear glasses. And now we get kind of a montage of Black Tom catching Beast up on the highlights of, well, we only see him talk about the Krakoan era. Presumably he also talked about some older stuff. And we don't need to see every last beat. We get enough to say, yeah, he's caught up to speed now. Beast is concerned that if he doesn't pass whatever purity test these new X-Forcers have waiting for him, they may just declare him a failed experiment and dispose of him, which you can see why he'd be a little concerned there.
Yeah.
Black Tom must have been talking for a while because he's gone and bored himself to sleep, but not before letting it slip that all X-Force members have access to the new tech. Once Tom is fully conked out, Beast just calmly, quietly says, request access, and then open cell. And naturally, the Krakoan tech responds to him. What was that, Ruben?
That seemed a little, convenient, a little too convenient for me. One, the Black Tom just, falls asleep, and then two, that they allow Beast to still control the tech.
If they're trying to finish this series up, I can see why they don't want to spend 2 or 3 pages on this. It works okay, but yeah, it is weird that he falls asleep. I mean, he's had a tough day, fine. I buy it that this Beast would be recognized as being the same as the other Beast, because he is. But also, I would have thought that Sage would have turned off access for the old Beast.
That's what I'm saying.
At some point.
If that's the guy you're worried about being out there, you let him have the passcode still, or at least have the system recognize him.
That's quite the oversight, yeah.
It's a bit weak for me, but it's fine. He gets out.
So now Bronze Age Beast does just what Modern Age Beast did at the start of the book. He accesses the computer terminal. This time he requests, quote, every file with Beast or Hank McCoy as the author or subject, which, if you're trying to do that in comic book world, that's a couple of long boxes, I gotta think. So he's got some reading to do. And he does not like what he sees. It literally brings a tear to his eye. And then on the final page, we see Beast outside the greenhouse, running away as fast as his furry blue legs will carry him. I do hope this works out better for him than when Laurent ran away from Krakoa North and Alpha Flight Mini, because that was kind of a mess.
He's a real speed reader. I know he's smart, but like you said, that is a lot of files to get through.
He's not a speedster, right? He's not literally connected to the Speed Force here. Maybe he had some sort of AI summary, give me the high points. You can do that now, right?
Read my emails and summarize. It's like you're an asshole. That's the summary.
And that's the book. Like I said, fairly straightforward comic. Some intrigue, some fighting, a nice twist. Nothing super deep. Very much a Ben Percy comic, which is different than what we expect from someone like Gillen or Hickman or Al Ewing, for instance, but it's pretty solid. I'm very curious to see how this Bronze Age version of Beast interacts with his modern world and his modern self. The coming attractions page at the end shows Beast paired up with Wonder Man, Simon Williams. And that is a classic pairing. Those two had been buds since they were both on the Avengers in the late 1970s, so putting them back together makes a lot of sense. Not that we get a whole lot of Wonder Man, but fun to see him again, too.
Yeah, I could see him going to his old buddy to say, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah. He's got to be in a weird state of mind having woken up like this, to say the least. So, nitpicks. Continued neglect of Omega Red. At this point, I think it would have been better if a person had just written him right out of the book like 10 issues ago, rather than have him just hanging around as, wallpaper. There's a half dozen other characters who could have served as the first guy Beast shoots in an opening scene. Didn't need Omega Red there, but at this point, they're just going to, bring him on to the end somehow.
He's doing the same thing as Wolverine. It's the same role, right? He's the guy you can brutally injure because he can just get back up. But this team also has Wolverine, so it's like, it's got 2 Wolverines, right? Why do we need the Omega Red on top of that? But
yeah, unless you're going to make use of him being kind of a villain, kind of gruff, kind of an outsider, and make that into a plot point into the story, he doesn't really fit. The Gill art, mostly really good. He has to draw 2 different beasts and convey their differences to us through just body language and facial expression. Really successful, I thought. There's one panel where he makes Sage look like a goofball when she says the fight a beast with a beast, that thing. He does that every issue he draws. He has one picture of Sage looking like an airhead, which I don't think works, but that's just
also worrying about getting a stiff drink, right? Or alcohol.
I suppose it's better than that. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a scene where she mentions it, where she's like, "Oh, I'm just thinking about." She's talking to Black Tom, right? And she's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about a drink," which is fine. She's an alcoholic, right? I'm sure that really happens. But
it kind of just seemed like she was just suddenly cured when she decided to be cured, and it doesn't work like that. So it's nice to have a mention here and there without it being overbearing. That's well done. So, yeah, I enjoyed this book. More than with most Percy issues, it's actually given me something to think about in between issues. Like, what will Bronze Age Beast replace the broken, compromised modern Beast? That could be fun. It's really similar to the whole Laura Wolverine thing, right? There's two of them running around. Something's going to happen to merge them together. Is one going to win? Are they going to both go forward in one body? How is it going to work? So, lots to think about. So I'm giving X-Force number 47, possibly the anti-penultimate issue of Ben Percy's X-Force run, a more than decent 8 out of 10, which is about the highest I've given this in rather a long time. How about you?
Yeah, I liked it as well. It has a story that matters, which is what do we do with Beast, right? And Beast is a character that, he's been around in the X-Men since the beginning, so it felt like he had been done pretty dirty as being just the, mustache twirling bad guy that we've had for like the last 50 issues. Not exactly 50, right? But he's been kind of a bad guy for quite a while. And, I'm okay with this solution. Like, yeah, it's a clone and you reset him to some earlier version. It doesn't really undo everything that happened, right? Which is what I think is the best reason for this, right? Because even with this new one, in theory being a hero and people could accept him as a hero, he did some pretty bad stuff. And you could have stories play out of that, like, yeah, you're not bad right now, but we know you can go bad, right?
That's a interesting position for him to be in, right? Because he didn't do the bad things, but the person he grew into did. So was that in him? And nature, nurture, all those cool ideas. It's really inherent. And I wonder if this is something that the Tom Brevoort version of Beast is going to pick up on, or it doesn't have to be fully wrapped up in just the next couple months. Curious.
Yeah. But I like it. I like the idea of us giving him a path to redemption and, a future X-Men team have him on board. I guess he can hang out with Charles, right? Like, you guys turned out to be assholes, crew.
Yeah, they could be in a little group therapy together.
We got to avoid our worst selves. But yeah, I liked it. I was pleasantly surprised. Some of the stuff, like, I griped about, like the access to the jail cell being very easy, but overall I was happy to have read the issue. So good to go on that one.
Do you have a number to give us?
Yeah, I'm joining at 8. I thought it was good. It's probably the easy recommendation for the week. I actually like Resurrection of Magneto more, but if I was just to tell somebody to read an issue of an X-Men comic this week, it'd probably be this one.
Yeah, I think it's good they came out the same week because they are very, very different, and people who like a certain kind of X-Men comic and only got Resurrection of Magneto, well, at least you've got this other book to fall back on and give you kind of more of what you wanted. So let's actually officially go on to Resurrection of Magneto, number 1 of 4. Quote, the title is The Lightning Path. And that is a Kabbalah term right up front, so Al Ewing is not hiding where he's going. It is written by Al Ewing, art by Luciano Vecchio, colors by David Curiel, letters by Joe Sabino, designed by Tom Muller and Jay Bowen. And Ruben, as I told you over DMs yesterday, this book feels like it was engineered in a lab to be perfectly not for me personally. Just not my kind of book. It's got a trip to the afterlife. It's got mystic symbolism from Kabbalah and from Tarot, on every single page. And it has several moments of Storm being a little too OP for my taste. That, and it brings back a Leo Williams concept from Trial of Magneto that I had hoped would just never, ever be mentioned again. So that's where we're starting. And you like this a bit more than I did, I think. You actually did a bunch of research, or if you can call reading comic books research, and I can do that. That's what I tell my wife I'm doing. I'm doing research, dear. So you read, what did you read to kind of give you some context for this?
Yeah, so somebody had posted on X that this was a spiritual successor to Al Ewing's Defenders story and then Defenders Beyond story. And for some reason, I was in the mood just to say, like, I don't know who the Defenders are or what they're about. And I like Al Ewing, and if people are saying those books are relevant to this story, I'll read those. So it's only 10 issues. I read 2 series of 5. I read both of them. I actually think if you were to try to enjoy this Resurrection of Magneto story, it's not a bad idea to read those because there is a lot of symbolism and even sort of pseudo continuity that comes out of those stories. And especially you could probably just get away with reading just the Defenders Beyond story because that even references Enigma and like him being a threat to.
When did that book
Marvel
come
Universe.
out, that series?
So Defenders was 2021 and Beyond was 2022.
Okay, so
and both of
still
those
like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, and both of those came out of the Marvel 1000 issue. That was like foreshadowed in that. Whatever that was, probably 2000.
And we know that Kieran Gillen and Al Ewing did work together to plant that little Enigma teaser in that issue way, way, way before it ever came up in Immortal X-Men, which is very cool.
Yeah. Those are both sort of world-building issues, too. Like, interestingly enough, especially in Defenders Beyond, I think from like issue 2, there's like these back pages where it's like, these ideas came from, and it's like a list. And so it gives you, like Fantastic Four, whatever, and like it basically spells it all out. So it's like, this is not all crazy hoodoo. I think what he was attempting to do was
at least it's not all new crazy hoodoo.
The point of that series was essentially to try to weave a bunch of nonsense stories from the past together to create some sort of coherent framework for some of the mystical characters and stories, including the Beyonder and Taya, who I guess we see in this issue, which is Galactus's mother. But like, it's the high-level summary. What is relevant is he came up with this idea that there were a bunch of eras of existence. So like, you could basically go before the Big Bang, and there was like a world before the Big Bang. And the current timeline is effectively the
that's where
cosmos.
Galactus is from, right? He's from the version of the universe before the current one.
And so in Ewing's story, he basically has like, well, there was a world before that world, and there was a world before that world. And if you go down to the very bottom, it basically gets down to like narrative themes, right? And so every world in theory is like a additive version of the prior world of existence. So you get, archetypical hero at the very bottom, right? Versus archetypical villain. And they go below that. It's like existence versus non-existence. Very metaphysical non-stuff. Metaphysical craziness. But some of the stuff that is more coherent, that's interesting to me is, I think you mentioned there's a lot of like tarot symbolism in this Resurrection of Magneto stuff. So I don't know if this is like a Defenders trope or at least an Al Ewing Defenders trope, but he had this magical tarot that Doctor Strange had, and what happens is you pull a card, it's some tarot card, and it summons a random Marvel character, and those people get conscripted into your team, and you pull 5 basically, so you get a team of 5.
That's very
and it's
Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so they're not a team, quote unquote, but they have to work together towards some sort of purpose, and it gives you a way to have like a rotating cast of characters.
Okay, well, I mean, that is a Defenders thing going way back, is that they're the team that's not really a team. So they've been so many different concepts over the years, but that's kind of the through line, is that they don't have like uniforms and all hang out together in a clubhouse.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's the explanation of how they get formed. And so in the first Defenders is Doctor Strange, and he gets this team together and they do some stuff. Along the way, they pick up Taya, and that's how she gets out of the sixth cosmos and joins ours. And then Doctor Strange died, as we know, right? In Death of Doctor Strange. And so one of the things he had set up as like a safety net was, if he dies, this tarot deck gets passed to Blue Marvel. And so that's Defenders Beyond. Blue Marvel like gets this message from the spell that Doctor Strange had set up. He gets the tarot deck.
Okay. I had no idea it was tied that directly into the Doctor Strange continuity. That's kind of cool.
So then he's like, and Blue Marvel doesn't want the deck, and he doesn't want to be the Defenders, but it kind of, it's tied to the universe. It kind of forces you to do it. Yeah. So he then goes on his own, mystical adventure where he goes up the cosmos instead of down the cosmos, which was like the first one. And he kind of, at the very top, meets One Above All and gets a glimpse of Enigma. Basically, like, Eternity tells him that there's like some villain from outside of time and space that is going to be a big threat to Eternity, and you need to go find out what it is. And when he gets up to One Above All, he gets to see the Enigma symbol.
Neat. So if you like those big abstract concepts, it sounds like those are the series for you to check out.
Yeah, and the art's pretty cool. Really, really good with Rodriguez's art in that. But anyway, so when we see the base, Chaldean base or something like that, with Blue Marvel in it, that is
Kadesh base.
Or Kadesh base, thank you, yeah. That is from Defenders Beyond. So he's got this undersea base, and one of the things in his base is this portal room where it's got portals to like basically everywhere, including
undersea. Okay, I don't think that was made clear in this book, but it's under the ocean. Interesting.
Yeah, he's under the ocean and he's hanging out with Taya, and the portal room connects to wherever, including in this case the waiting room from.
Okay, so that whole portal machine is already established in continuity, not a brand new thing.
That's been there, and it was
okay.
At least as of Defenders Beyond Time, it was part of his base.
Nice. So that's some really good background, and I think we're going to jump into this issue here. And if other stuff comes up that you want to throw in some relevant bits from Defenders things, you jump right in. So, Ruben, how exactly does this book open? How would you characterize, say, this first page here?
Well, he got the memo, man. So. He's doing the dream sequence, right?
It is a dream sequence. I mean, well, sequence is too strong a term, right? It's just one page, splash page, just one image, and the art is quite striking. It's Magneto. We see him from behind, head slumped forward. He's in a distorted, dreamlike landscape rendered in these saturated clashing colors. There are 5 Magneto helmets scattered at his feet. 3 of them are the classic red-purple look, plus 1 in black and another in white. I'm curious if those colors are meaningful, but we'll find out eventually, I guess. He's saying, Aurora, I was wrong. Now, there's a couple of possibilities what he could mean by that. And Ruben, what do you think he means when he says, I was wrong?
Yeah, so my take on that was, and this is what I'm going to say, I don't actually mind this dream sequence. Usually my big gripe about dream sequences is I don't see any point to them. But this is basically, my take was, Magneto, when he made that pact with Aurora that they were going to give up their data backups in the mutant resurrection queue. I think it was the point was like, I've lived a life of no regret and I don't have any reason to stay here, right? Like I was satisfied with the life that I lived. And so I took it as him basically through the mind telling her, like, actually regret the choice that I had my data backup deleted. Mm-hmm. That there's something still for me to do on Earth.
That's certainly one big possibility. I'm sure that's what Al Ewing wants us to think, at least at the surface. But there's lots of things that Magneto has done wrong over the years. Things just linked to the whole Moira Krakoa thing, all his various villainous activities. So it could be more complicated than that. But the big obvious one is, maybe I shouldn't have deleted my my hard drive that I had backed up in the attic there. Maybe that was a bad choice. This is a tarot card. Get ready for a lot of tarot card images. Specifically, this is the 5 of Cups. If you Google 5 of Cups tarot, same pose, same landscape with, instead of cups, here we have helmets in the same exact locations with some of them being spilled. This is, I think, the most striking tarot card imagery in the book. Probably my favorite single page of the book. And like you said, it is a dream sequence, but it means something. It's not just filling up page space. It's got really strong art, really strong character information, and it sets the stage for what's going forward in just one page.
Yeah, it's sort of a call to action.
Yeah, it is. But I had to just point out, hey, here we are again. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. And this whole thing I was wrestling with was like, hey, you bring back Magneto, but he said he didn't want to come back, right? And so that's kind of against his wishes. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I could see the need to bring him, right? Like I think in the story, Storm talks about how, mutant kind is under peril and we need a leader, and Charles is not equipped to be that leader right now, right? Like Magneto would be a great person to lead. But you still have the problem of he doesn't want to come back, right? So getting a dream message where you're like subconsciously thinking, well, actually, he does want to come back. It helps me understand like why Storm would go against his wishes.
So the next page, we see Storm wake up from her nightmare. She's in bed with Craig from NASA. Both appear to be, not wearing so much like pajamas. So I guess their relationship's going all right. Are they still on Mars, we think?
I'm assuming so. I think this is like, post X-Men Red. They just kind of won over the battle and are just kind of there now. I kind of like this idea, too, because I was like, who the hell is this guy? And like, why would she be with him? And I appreciated he gave a little bit of characterization here where he explains, to him, she's just, this hot girl that is on Mars. And she kind of likes not having to be like the weather goddess or the, leader of the Iraqi or whatever other role she's assigned by everybody else.
And the kids are still there. I forget their names, the 2 Iraqi kids that Craig kind of rescued and I guess adopted. Maybe if the kids are around, wear some pajamas. I don't know. I'm a prude, but hey, that's me.
And he's not part of all the pure heroic bullshit either, right? He's just a dude living on Mars.
Yeah, she can be kind of a normal woman, at least occasionally.
She's not a king of, I forget what T'Challa's role is, but he's not even a king anymore, but whatever, right? Like all that stuff comes with baggage, and I guess Craig has less baggage.
So Craig tries to comfort Storm, and he gets off lucky that she doesn't accidentally electrocute him because she's all freaked out and shooting lightning bolts around. The narration boxes throughout are from Storm's point of view, and this scene ends with her telling us, "I have to go, Craig. It's time to die." So that's a dramatic ending to a strong opening scene. So next we jump to Kadesh base there with the Blue Marvel. We don't know exactly how much time has passed. Probably not a whole lot. She seems to have made up her mind. She drops in to visit the Blue Marvel, Adam Brashear, at his Kadesh base. And
yeah, I don't know how they know each other. I wish that was spelled out. It probably is somewhere, right? I'm just going to assume they're part of the general superhero community. But she talks about, at some point she mentions that Monica Rambeau was in a relationship with him. So maybe just word of mouth.
Maybe the little superhero lady gossip. They're in a text chain somewhere. Who knows?
It's interesting, the characterization of him, too. He comes across a lot like a Mr. Terrific type character, right? Like another very intelligent.
Yeah, Mr. Terrific, Reed Richards, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but almost like too neutral, right? Like he seems to be more focused on like, let's just explore and experiment with this stuff.
Yeah, we get that from, again, it's told from Storm's point of view, so it's filtered through her own biases, which who knows what putting in there. But the idea that, it's almost like that scientist too, we can do it, so let's just do it without thinking of too much of the consequences. And Taya is here, who I didn't know who she was, so when I Googled her and found out that she's Galactus's mommy, that was kind of funny. Maybe she's kind of cool. The important thing here is, he's a scientist kind of guy, Mr. Terrific type guy, and he's going to help her get where she needs to go. And he goes to this machine. Is there a name for this machine with all the windows?
It's just the portal room is what.
The portal room. That's fine. And he's going to, twist some dials, push some buttons, and open up a window that he says can deliver Storm directly to it's the waiting room. That special part of the afterlife created by the Scarlet Witch at the end of Leah Williams' Trial of Magneto miniseries. So,
I like what they do. I'm going to say this. I like what they do here because we read it, right? That was created. It was supposed to be this big deal, and everybody thought this could get you every character back, right? And
take all the limitations off of Resurrection. The few that there were just open up the floodgates. Everybody can come back. Every mutant who ever lived can come back.
But what I like here is Al Ewing gives us an explanation for why that's not the case, why it doesn't work that way. So the waiting room exists, but once they get there, they learn it's not that everybody's stuck there. People can still leave the waiting room. And
there's
some people are just
exits from the waiting room. Yes.
Yeah, some people are just going to be like, nah, I don't need to come back, right? So this allows for a lot of like, this character comes back, but not that character stories, right? If they want to reset everything and then, as we assume at the end of this era, just get rid of the like resurrection stuff across the board. I think this will give you an answer for like why they can't just bring back everybody who's dead.
Fair enough. So Brashear opens up this portal and he doesn't expect it, but Storm just literally dives right through, which I don't know what he thought she was going to do, but that's what she does. So
it seems like her body stays and her spirit is what really goes through the portal.
Yeah, so we only find that out later on in one little kind of mystical panel showing her body still back here in this portal room, which I thought until we get to that page, I thought her whole body went into the afterlife. I guess it doesn't work like that.
There's a lock and key thing, right? Your spiritual body leaves and your body is collapsed.
Sure. Why not? So Storm
that's a great series, by the way, as an aside. Everybody go read Lock and Key. I love that one.
Oh, yeah, that one. I did read a couple of those volumes. That is a good book. But here in Resurrection of Magneto in the Marvel Universe, yes. Storm gets into the waiting room and she's greeted by Tarn the Uncaring, which is a fun twist. I like that.
I like this part a lot. So at this part, I was like, I don't understand why Jason doesn't love this story. Because this is great, right? Like, all of this, at this point, I'm following it. It's coherent. It's a little weird, but I'm following, like, point A to point B. It all makes sense to me. And I really love the idea of, like, Tarn's in the waiting room. Of course he is, right? Like, that came into existence before he died, so why wouldn't he be there, right? And for a second there, I was like, oh, man, are they bringing him back as, like, a big bad? Like, that'd be pretty cool. Because I thought he was a pretty good villain. Of the new villains they introduced this last 5 years, he was one of the ones that...
Yeah, just in that anything from that Hellions book, I'm glad to be reminded of. It's fun. So Tarn was killed by Magneto in a challenge. I mean, that's how Magneto joined the Great Ring.
Yeah, it got
so just having that Magneto connection is fun. And behind Tarn are 7 cryptic symbolic images. Ruben, would it shock you that we're in tarot card world again? This is the 7 of Cups. Google 7 of Cups. It looks really similar. They've added some Marvel tweaks. The symbol of the floating head, that is from the card. Here is the head of the Living Tribunal. The figure of Death looks a lot like Lady Death, who Thanos wants to go out with. That kind of thing. Tarn tells Storm that these symbols are also exits. I guess so that the dead mutants can choose to leave the waiting room and enter an afterlife of their choosing. And we're not really given exactly what each means. I'm thinking that the wheel with the snake through it, it makes me think of, I think they call it the wheel of life, the wheel of dharma, the wheel of reincarnation. So that's probably the Hindu, Buddhist end of things. But I really have no guesses for the others. Maybe the figure of death is like complete annihilation.
Why not?
Oh, and there's these 7 colored circles in the sky who don't come from the tarot card. Maybe something connected with the infinity gems? That's just a guess. I have no idea.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff here where I looked at it and I'm like, okay, it's weird stuff. But it'll probably matter later. Yeah. And that's maybe one of the, let me just say, when I read these Bizarro stories, I don't always need to make it make sense to me, which is total cop-out. But sometimes I'm just like, that's just abstract, weird art, and I just move on.
Well, for me, it really depends on the writer. And I fully believe that Al Rider has a meaning and a purpose that he intends for everything in this book, right? Some other writers you might think just write in their script, draw some wacky crap. And the artist just kind of goes and draws some wacky crap. But I don't think that's how Al Ewing does things. I don't know if I care about his plan, but I'm sure he's got one. So next, Tarn and Storm get into a fight, and Storm very easily kicks his ass because this is Al Ewing writing Storm. So no actual tension here, but it sure looks cool. Love the way Luciano Vecchio draws a monstered out Tarn. And also he makes Storm's hair look amazing. I don't know. For some reason, just the way he draws her hair, it's always in a different position and pose, and it's flowing, and it's got these details. Looks very cool. So Tarn is like super dead now. He's dead in the afterworld, and exactly what that means, who the hell knows. Next, we have Storm have a conversation with her own ancestor, Ashake, who's, back in ancient Egypt, magical kind of lady. Are you familiar with Ashake?
I am, yeah. She was a big character in Claremont's run over the years, and then I think he brought her back again recently in that Gambit series that he did.
Yes, that's what the footnote sends us to. It sends us to Gambit issues 2 and 3, which is the 2022 Gambit miniseries.
The gist is, at some point in time, Nanny had captured Storm and turned her into a little girl, and she had lost access to her powers and was on the run. And that's kind of when she met Gambit for the first time. He kind of like paired up with her, and then they were gallivanting around New Orleans, stealing as like a Robin Hood kind of duo. And eventually she gets her powers back in full through kind of mystical visions from her ancestor.
Now, this conversation with Ashake is where the book really started losing me, because it's a lot of dreams carry meaning, symbols and metaphors are the true reality, that kind of thing that just makes my eyes glaze over. And this is where Ashake gives Storm a vision of what's happening with her body back in Blue Marvel's Bachelor Pad. She's getting like Taya's being like a human defibrillator trying to shock her back to life, which isn't going to work if her spirit's somewhere else, but yeah, I don't really know what's going on here physically, spiritually. I guess it puts a time limit on Storm's visit to the afterworld. Doesn't seem to hurry her up much. She seems very, very matter-of-fact, very leisurely here. Time moves differently in different worlds. I bet it's going to be the explanation. So Ashake tells Storm that, yeah, Magneto was here and that he exited through the tower. So more dream symbolism. She climbs the tower. She's already in the tower. The tower crumbles, and she falls somewhere down into the ground where she finds herself chatting with a Dominion. Ooh, I was not expecting Dominions in this book. Specifically, she's talking to the Phalanx. So what did you think of this section?
Yeah, I agree with you, the Ashake conversation stuff. I just kind of, my eyes glazed over, and I went into like skim mode at that point. But then I saw the Phalanx, and I got excited again, because I just think those characters are cool. And to me, they seem like a huge threat, and I'm always trying to understand them.
It's an awesome page turn, because this page looks just freaking amazing. It has the technological and mystical and incomprehensible all kind of mixed together, just the way that the Dominion should look. The way it talks, it's kind of, it's sort of like Warlock and his people, which makes sense, where it kind of says the same thing 3 times in different words. Greeting, acknowledgement, warning, forever, outside ever, beyond ever, that kind of thing, which is fine.
And these are the ones that we see get hollowed out in Rise of the Powers of X, right?
Oh, yes, I guess so. Right.
And this is all before that, so it kind of makes sense that they're not at that point.
Or whatever before means for a Dominion, but sure.
And they also, this Dominion is in Defenders Beyond also. So I don't know exactly how they access where they are, but they're Dominion. I guess they can do whatever they want.
It's good to be a Dominion, right? So this Dominion is concerned about Enigma. At least I think it's concerned, and we know it should be because it ends up in at least one timeline being killed by it, or hollowed out, or how we want to call it.
Yeah, in the Defenders Beyond, they talk about that idea of there being multiple Dominions side by side. They're like, yeah, there's a bunch of Dominions out here. We all are out here in the outside of time and space realm, and our only purpose is to grow, right? And so we do. But there's one of us, the Enigma engine, that is threatening everything, including our existence. So,
all right.
Yeah, which was interesting.
So this Phalanx Dominion calls Enigma by 2 additional names. One is Ace of Crowns. And as far as I can tell, Crowns is not a suit of the tarot, but the Ace of Swords card does show a crown perched on the tip of the sword. So presumably that's what they're talking about, crown, Enigma, all that stuff. The other name the Phalanx uses for Enigma is Fifth Business. And I have no idea what that means. Is that anything connected with Defenders?
2 things. So the crowns thing, too, is also this idea of a crown sits on top of the head, right? And,
sure.
The Enigma Dominion wants to be on top of everything. And then the fifth business, in Defenders Beyond, there's these allusions to when you see a suit of 4, look for the 5th, which I think was a allusion to the idea that there's 4 Essexes, right? And look for the 5th one.
That hangs together. Yep.
Yeah. So I think fifth business, I think, is just hey, this is the Essex. Yeah.
So on the next page, Storm asks the Phalanx about Magneto. This page shows Storm on one side, Magneto on the others, both posed like the tarot card, the Hanged Man. Magneto head down, Storm head up. And I have a vague idea that when you're doing tarot card stuff, which direction the card's pointing is really important. But I don't know the details.
Yeah. I'm not a tarot user, fan, expert, interest. But yeah, at least in the Defenders books tell me that if you have the card face up, it means one thing. And if you flip it, it means another thing.
I knew a girl in high school who got really into it in a way that made me pretend to be really into it for a while. It's not important, but that's my last memory of tarot card stuff was in the, early 90s, let's say.
I mean, wouldn't they only get flipped upside down if you shuffled them like a animal so that the cards aren't in the same direction?
I don't know. There's a whole procedure I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. It offends, this is a total tangent, but you guys probably know this. I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan, player, and drives me batshit insane when you cut a deck and shuffle them so that the cards aren't in the same direction, because then you're drawing cards and they're just, oh God.
That is a level of pickiness I'd never even considered, but I get it. Okay.
With regular playing cards, it's fine, right? Because they're
made that way. Yeah.
They're made that way. They're flipped, right? So it doesn't matter the way you shuffle them, but you got to shuffle shit. If it's if there's a clear top and bottom to a card, you have to shuffle in the same direction, or there's something wrong with you, or at least there's something wrong with me.
Okay. So, folks, you've learned something today: how to either not annoy Ruben, or possibly how to annoy Ruben, depending on what you're going for. Okay, so. Meanwhile, back in the book, this isn't really Magneto, right? It's the Dominion projecting an image of Magneto. So they've seen him, thought he was kind of interesting for a limited individual. Not interesting enough to keep. Storm, though, she's even more interesting.
So I want to pause on this, too.
Uh-huh.
Just to quickly talk about this. I thought this was an interesting concept. So basically, what they're saying to me is Magneto was in the waiting room, and Magneto moved on, right? He picked one of these endings. So he went through a door. And the Dominion then saw him. And their point is, remember, they try to add new knowledge to them to expand their own knowledge, right? So they effectively,
kind of Borg-like, but a little more abstract.
Yeah, exactly. With the idea of, I think they do scan people, and sometimes they decide you're just not worth it, and at that point, you're just food for the Dominion.
You're out for a walk, and you see a nickel on the ground. Is it worth picking up? Probably not. A quarter? Well, maybe a quarter I'll stop and pick up.
That's exactly that's perfect. Yeah, I like that analogy. That works perfectly. Yeah, if it's a $20 bill, hell yeah, you're grabbing that, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, he was the penny, and I'm not sure what the value of Aurora is, but I guess it kind of depends on who you are and what will make you stop. But
so let's give the actual quote from Magneto. Magneto, they call him. A rare atom, we looked at him, paired his self to the base strata, cataloged his pain, studied him, then sent him on. And then when they go to Storm, they say, you are of greater interest, worthy, useful, consumable. And then Storm says, consume this, which is not a good line, Al Ewing. Sorry, not good. And then they have a fight, and Storm kind of wins against the Dominion?
Yeah, this is the part I didn't like. Because I needed to understand exactly what happened. If you're going to convince me that she has any ability to do anything against the Dominion, it needs to be very clear what she did.
Yeah, there is one little narration box that says, all I can truly do is hope that my power in this place is, italics, symbolic enough to sting.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, sure.
I can't hurt them, but I can make myself uncomfortable to consume, I guess.
I don't really buy it, but whatever happens, yeah, she needs to get away from the Dominion. She had to meet the Dominion, get some info, and then the art again looks really cool. There's a page where they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versions of Storm, all kind of fading into each other, and she lands in this landscape that we saw in that dream sequence. Identical there. Same purple ground and red sky. She's in the same kind of pose as Magneto. She's got a better rear end, got to say that. But other than that, same pose. At her feet are these, I guess they're just like symbols of her headbands she's worn over the years.
Yeah, similar to the helmets that you saw with Magneto. That was like all the different Magneto helmets. Now we get all the different Storm headbands. Yep. But she hasn't worn recently. But
okay, that's why I don't recognize it.
Yeah,
Art-wise, it's a really nice bookend showing the first page and now to the next to last page. And then she's arrived at wherever in the afterlife she needed to be to find Magneto. Maybe we get a name for it next time. But on the final page, we see Magneto. He's in that burning river in the landscape. He's crying tears of blood, not having a great time. And surrounding him are 2 giant walls of names, which remind me of nothing else more than like the Vietnam Memorial in D.C. So I presume these are the names of people Magneto killed over the years. I can only make out a few of the names. I don't recognize them, and the couple I Googled came up empty. They repeat, too. I see Jackson Acevedo on there a couple times, also Chaim Gallego. So I'm thinking that maybe they're just we don't really need to know the exact names. The idea is just he killed a bunch of people, bunch of names on the walls.
That makes sense. Well, this goes back to my theory of like he's not satisfied in the afterlife because he doesn't think he's actually atoned for the guilt that he has in his life.
Yeah, he doesn't look happy. This is not a Buffy situation where they resurrected her and brought her out of heaven. He's not exactly in heaven right now. So yeah, maybe next time we'll find out what he thinks of the whole resurrection idea, maybe what he meant exactly, if he did send that message that he was wrong, what he meant by that. And the cover of the next issue pictures Storm Magneto fighting in front of one of those walls of names. So we're going to learn more about that wall going forward.
Well, we've had a lot of Magneto was always like mutant superiority, right? It was kind of one of his agendas. Maybe once he got to the afterlife, he came to the conclusion that like actually mutants, or maybe he's like the new Charles, right? Like maybe he's coming around to this idea of like all life has value, human or mutant, and that stance that I took and all those people I killed because of that stance was ultimately the wrong thing, and woe is me.
Yeah, well, we'll see what he thinks next time, I think. So let's talk about the art. It's amazing. Luciano Vecchio draws maybe the best Storm I've seen in a long time. Can't get over the hair. Plus all the wacky dream and tarot stuff. David Curiel's deep, saturated, kind of not getting along well with each other kind of colors really bring out the whole otherworldliness of the settings. The only scene that looks relatively normal in terms of color is the bit where Storm wakes up from her nightmare, and that is like the real world supposed to be contrasting with the other scenes. So I like that look. Every other page is heightened and dramatic. One of the best looking books I've seen in a while. Like, if you're into cool comic art, maybe you do what Luke Hollywood does with his untranslated mangas. You'll buy it just to look at the pretty pictures. The story, we found some interesting things in it. Ruben, thank you. You helped me make some connections. Still not my kind of thing. For all the reasons I've talked about, I haven't even written down a number. Usually in my notes, I have a score written, and I'll tweak it up or down based on our discussion.
Yeah.
I got nothing written down here. If I'm going to try to create it, if I'm going to try to grade it based on what Al Ewing's trying to do, right? Maybe not so much on what I want him to do, but what he's trying to do. He's successful at doing what he wants to do, I think. And the artist certainly gets full marks. So from that standpoint, I think I got to call this an 8 out of 10 anyway, even though it's not a book I'm going to want to go back to for my own personal enjoyment.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I try to keep that perspective. It's not always easy, but there we are.
Yeah. It's hard for me to grade this too, surprisingly. I mean, I did enjoy a lot of it more than I think most people will. And certainly I wouldn't recommend this for everyone. I get a big kick out of like symbolism and connections and like a weird structure. And like, if it sort of makes sense enough, that usually works for me. So I'm optimistic about this, and seeing how it does connect to some of the stuff I've read through the Defenders stories kind of elevates my score. I can appreciate this is not a book for most people. And
Jim, don't read this book. You would not like this book.
Yeah, Jim, stay away from it. And even for me, at the end of this,
Matt Razor does not want to read this book.
Yeah. At the end of all this, I could ultimately just be like, that sucked, right? If it's too weird and there's no explanation, I might not like it at the end. But having seen how each of the Defenders to Defenders Beyond to this stories kind of connect to the other stuff, it gives me hope that it will make enough sense for me by the end of it all. So I think I'll say 8 as well. But for me, it's an 8 that like, I actually want to see the next issue. I do hope it doesn't get any weirder than this. Even as much as it was, even as exciting as it was to see like the Dominion. I don't even know how they like where they were. Right, like I don't know what this whole idea of like falling from the tower means. I'm just like, it's sort of like the White Hot Room, right? It's fine to see it for an issue and just see some weird White Hot Room stuff, but I don't want like 4 issues of White Hot Room, right? At some point, it's got to be a little bit more connected and a little
more grounded. Bring it, right? Wake up. Like, if this is almost itself like a dream, we don't want to spend a long time in this dream world. We want to kind of come out, or at least have some explanation to make it a little more grounded, a little more logical, a little less just pretty symbolic pictures. At least that's what I would like to see.
And I was really on board at the beginning. Like, I'd say the first half of the series, I was like, oh wow, this is pretty cool, right? I could make it very simple, right? You go find the guy that's got portals to everywhere. You go in a portal, you get to the afterlife. You find out that people were able to leave the afterlife, so you got to go find out where they went. You fight the guy who was a big bad and who's unhappy that you're looking for Magneto, the guy that killed him. That all makes sense to me.
And I generally don't like comic stories where they visit the afterlife. Right? We've seen it a few times. We saw Daredevil just did it at the end of that last run. I remember Damian did it in the Teen Titans at one point. It kind of just makes the afterlife like just another weird place where, to me, it should be really different. Like the only comic writer I think who really does it well has been Neil Gaiman. He understands how to make things kind of strange, in an interesting, meaningful, philosophical way. So I was kind of turned off, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, I'll say this for Ewing, and maybe this makes you feel a little better. In Defenders Beyond, one thing that was interesting to me is he gets to the one above all, and then they basically realize like there's actually something above that, right? That's even more abstract, that is more like true God, true heaven, and that the one above all is just like the comic version of a God that they can reach and that they can comprehend. And so I was like, that's a pretty cool idea. It's like, yes, your comic characters couldn't actually get to like what, a religious person views as heaven, but there could be like a, comic book heaven that they could reach. And it could be more like
comic book heaven.
Yeah,
for sure.
Tangential.
And that's where fictional characters can go.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So that will wrap up our little philosophical jibber jabber there. Let's look ahead to next week. Next week, we have 2 more books. We have Wolverine number 42. It feels pretty quick, but this book is double shipping, so we're going to get these issues coming fast and furious. This will be part 2 of the Sabretooth War. Wonder if the next issue is going to look more like, who's the writer who writes the Sabretooth and the Exiles? His name just fell out of my head.
Is that the Steve Fox? No, it's not Steve Fox.
No, it's... I'm sorry. But, that he had more of a social kind of agenda. He had different ties back to symbolic things. And I'm curious if the next issue of the Sabretooth War is going to be more in his wheelhouse. and
Kirk
less
Lavelle.
Yeah, Lavelle. That's right. But it's less Ben Percy. I'm kind of curious if they're kind of going back and forth issue wise, or if it's going to look as Ben Percy as the last issue did. So that'll be fun. And also, we have Dead X-Men #1 coming out, which I had forgotten was even a book. It fell out of my head. Speaking of things falling out of my head.
I did not realize that was coming out now. I thought that was like a post event.
No, it's part
story
of Fall of the House of X, and this is written by Steve Fox, who wrote Dark X-Men, is currently writing the Spider-Woman series that's tying into Gang War, so he's got that. So I'm curious what this is going to be, because we've had lots of questions as to how Resurrection is going to be a thing, and it's called Dead X-Men. I haven't read any of the solicits, so maybe it'll be fun.
I just pre-ordered it.
Good for you. You can, we'll definitely talk about that next week. And Ruben, I'm guessing I already know what you might recommend our loyal listeners read this week.
Yeah,
and that's
actually,
going to be those Defenders series, right? Where do you suggest they start?
I think you'd start at Defenders #1. I don't know if the Marvel 1000 is necessary reading, but
okay.
I thought it was coherent enough. If you're interested in sort of metaphysical ideas.
Very good. And speaking of broad metaphysical ideas, Ruben, what should everyone do before our next show?
Yeah, I got to read more X-Men books.